This is Davenport.
All right, sir. Would you, how old are you?
I am 47,
And where are you employed?
Greenville County Sheriff's Office.
And what do you currently do for the Greenville County Sheriff's Office?
Second command at the Sheriff's Office, Untitled Chief Deputy.
Okay, and what are the duties and responsibilities of the chief deputy?
Planning, budgeting, liaison between county government and other organizations.
So you're second in command after the sheriff?
Yes, sir.
How long did you say you've been with the sheriff's office?
It will be 24 years in December.
Very good. In January of 2017, what was your job?
I was a major and basically in charge of operations.
All right, and would that be the number 3 position?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, what did that job entail?
Basically, liaison between the chief deputy, who was John Eldridge at that time. My oversight was pretty much making sure that the captains were in order doing their duties.
Did you, at that time, was there an understanding that there was about to be a change in the chief deputy's position?
Yes, sir.
And had you been selected by the incoming Sheriff Will Lewis to take over as chief deputy?
Yes, sir, but it wasn't, I don't believe it was until after he actually took over that I was informed of that.
I see. And do you recall, of course, when in January of 2017, who was the previous sheriff?
Steve Loftus.
And the incoming sheriff who came in,
Willis.
and is he in the courtroom?
Yes, sir.
Can you point him out for us?
Right there in the middle.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd ask the record to reflect the witnesses identified.
So reflected.
The defendant.
Witness identified as the defendant.
So if he was elected in November of 16 and sworn in January of 17, when did his term end?
It would have been 2021.
In January?
Yes, sir.
When did you first meet the defendant?
Trying to think back, I believe it was probably, I was promoted to the rank of sergeant back in around 2003, and if I'm not mistaken, he was already on a platoon that I got assigned to.
So he was previously employed at the sheriff's
Yes,
office?
sir.
And approximately when, if you can recall, did he leave the sheriff's office?
I wasn't on the same platoon at that point, so I really don't know.
But at some point, he was no longer employed there?
Yes.
Okay. When did you first learn that he was running for sheriff? Do you recall?
Prior to the race, I don't know what day, but prior to the race.
Maybe 2016, somewhere in there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you interact with him at all during the period of the campaign in the spring and early summer of 2016?
No, sir, other than I may have seen him at a debate or two right around there, and that's about it.
When did you learn that he had actually won the runoff for the primary?
Whenever that primary that was that night, that's when I learned.
Okay. And was there, did he have opposition in the general election?
Yes, sir.
He did? In the general election in
Oh,
November?
no, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm confused.
No, that's all right. He had opposition in the primary.
Primary, yes, sir.
But was anybody running in, and he ran as a Republican?
Yes, sir.
Was there a Democrat who filed for sheriff?
Not that aware.
So the primary was the end of it?
Yes, sir.
Effectively. There was no opposition in November.
Correct.
Did you talk to him? When did you first talk to him in that period of time between him winning the primary and being sworn in January? Did you have occasion to talk to him? Because now it's a transition period at that point.
Yeah, we had a brief phone conversation, nothing about what was going to transpire right after, but he just said he would get with me, and we spoke after that. I can't recall how long after that, but yes.
Was there some period of time prior to him taking office that there was meetings and
Yes.
discussions about the
Yes.
transition and what was going to take place?
Yes, sir.
Were you a part of that?
Yes, sir.
When did you first meet Savannah Neighbors?
During that time, during one of those transitional meetings, I don't know exactly when, but during one of those meetings.
And what did you understand her role in the new administration to be?
She was going to be his personal assistant.
Okay. Did the previous sheriff, Sheriff Loftus, have a personal assistant?
No.
And what was your impression of her when you first met her?
I thought she was a little bit young. Didn't have, one way or another, I didn't have much of an impression of her at all.
Okay. And did the defendant tell you how he knew Savannah Neighbors?
Yeah, at one point he did mention that he knew her since she was younger, as she was growing up, and she actually babysat his children.
Okay. And at some point, did you come to understand that she was actually on the payroll working with him?
Yes, sir.
And that was prior to him taking office. She was a county employee for a brief period of time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Fast forwarding to January 3rd, were you present at the swearing in?
Yes, sir.
And there's video of that. Is that the command staff that's on the stage with the sheriff?
Yes, if I'm not mistaken, there was actually two, maybe a private one. One I didn't attend, I had a death in my family, and the second one over at County Square, yes, I was present for that.
And you're one of the individuals in that video?
Yes, sir.
Being sworn in, and the sheriff was there as well?
Yes, sir.
Did you know anything at the time she started about Savannah Neighbors' salary?
No.
Did you have any clear understanding of what her actual job duties were going to be?
Just basically get him to do whatever he needed to do as far as administrative duties and things of that nature. Scheduling appointments is what I was told, things of that nature.
Did the previous sheriff, Sheriff Loftus, have an administrative assistant? Like a
Jackie,
secretary?
yes, Jackie Cooper.
Okay, and did she remain in her position?
Yes,
And where was her desk physically located?
just outside the sheriff's office.
And is that where it had been under Sheriff Loftus?
Yes,
And I think you said you'd been there 24 years?
it'll be 24 in December.
And who was the sheriff before Loftus?
Sam Simmons,
And who was his administrative assistant?
Johnny McBrown. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
I don't know because I wasn't at that portion of the building. I was just a sergeant back on the other end of
Okay.
deputy, so I can't remember.
All right. From your working with Ms. Cooper, did you have an understanding about her competence and familiarity
Yes.
with the agency and the history and all the, where things were and that sort of thing?
Yes,
Did she know her job?
yes.
Did you come to learn of any additional, besides salary, additional perks or benefits for Ms. Neighbors related to her job?
She had a vehicle that I'm aware of, a cell phone, computer, and I believe an iPad.
All right. How many administrative assistants or civilian employees have personal cars assigned?
None that I'm aware of.
Was her car a newer car or an older car?
Newer,
Was it a brand new car?
yes.
And what kind of car was it? You were-
Ford Explorer,
In the hierarchy, since people in the jury probably aren't familiar with law enforcement and the importance of cars and vehicles in law enforcement and newer cars versus driving older cars, can you give them some idea about that?
it's a big deal. That's your roaming office, and that's where you spend 12 hours plus per day. So it's a pretty big deal.
And where do people who work at the law enforcement center, where do they park?
Typically, most people park in the back parking lot. Certified deputies, most of them park back in the back parking lot.
Is it a big parking lot?
Not big enough. I mean, it's got a good size to it.
Where do people have to park if they can't park there?
Up front, on the curb, just where we find space.
All right. Are there spots in that parking lot right there adjacent to the law enforcement center that are reserved?
Yes,
Does the sheriff have a reserved spot?
yes,
Does the chief deputy have a reserved spot?
yes.
How far down the chain of command, how far down the food chain does it run before you stop getting a reserve spot?
Typically, lieutenant. That's pretty much where it stops at.
Did Savannah Neighbors have a reserve spot?
Yes.
Were you, or did you become aware of Savannah Neighbors' involvement in operational issues in law enforcement, and like crime scenes and that sort of thing?
Yes.
And
You said when?
Yeah, did you become aware? at
Yes,
any
I
point?
became aware. Yes.
And what did you understand that?
That she showed up at a couple different crime scenes.
Could you explain to the jury, since again, they're not law enforcement, what is the significance of a crime scene and what do you do typically if there was a shooting incident?
To make it easy, basically you want to preserve evidence. You want to include as many people or delete as many people as possible. You may have a shell casing down, an article of some type. You want to preserve that. That's kind of like no man's land.
As the chief deputy, if there was a shooting on the street in Greenville tomorrow and you arrived 5 minutes later as they're putting tape around it, would you go into the crime scene?
No, sir.
Who goes into the crime scene?
The techs, the investigators, evidence techs and investigators.
And what's the purpose of keeping other people out?
Because you don't want to contaminate that specific area.
Is that a fairly big deal in law enforcement?
Yes, sir.
People were just allowed to wander willy-nilly through the crime scene, what impact would that have on the case later in the prosecution?
You probably wouldn't have much of a case if that was actually happening.
During those first couple of months, January and February, did you, were you able to observe, let me ask this first, where's your office in relation to the sheriff's?
My office would have been, back in those few months until I took over as chief deputy, would have been at the opposite end of the hallway. If you're familiar with the LAC, like I said, it's kind of laid out, it's pretty good distance.
And where is it now?
Right next to the sheriff's office.
So, in the capacity that you were in then, did you have occasion to be down at the
Yes, sir.
sheriff's office regularly?
Yes, sir.
And did you see Ms. Neighbors and the defendant interacting on pretty much a daily basis?
Yeah, for the time I was down there, yes, sir.
And what was your impression of their relationship?
They were friendly, obviously knew each other.
Okay, and how does a deputy refer to you now? When they come to
Chief.
you, they call you chief?
Yes, sir.
They don't call you Marcus or Mark or?
No.
Okay. And sergeants?
Sir?
And sergeants?
Sergeant, yes, sir.
Is there a hierarchy in law enforcement?
Yes, sir.
Almost like the military?
Yes.
And so, what do you call, who's the interim sheriff now is who?
Sheriff Brown.
And what do you call him?
Sheriff.
And does everybody else call him sheriff?
Yes, sir.
What did Savannah Neighbors call the defendant?
I've heard her call him Bill, and I've heard her call him Sheriff as well, but both.
Did they seem familiar?
Yes.
In fact, during this time period, was she with him most of the time wherever he went?
When I saw him, yes.
Now, tell the jury, if you could, what is the BMW performance track?
Oh, it's, from my understanding, it's basically something that is done as a team building exercise.
And what is it?
What is it? You drive. You drive on that track.
And where is it?
It's up in Duncan, Spartanburg County.
Is it just open to anybody who wants
No.
to go there?
No.
Do you know somebody
Yes,
at
sir.
BMW? Were you able to arrange a trip to go visit?
Yeah, I scheduled a trip for myself, the sheriff, Joe Cornell, who's the county administrator, and former chief deputy John Eldridge.
Is this a fairly nice thing to be able to go do?
Yes, sir.
Now, so it's you, then Chief Deputy Eldridge, the new sheriff, Will Lewis, and Joe Cornell.
Yes.
And tell us how that day went when you went to the
Well,
school.
I want to say I probably arrived first because I scheduled it. Joe and John showed up shortly after, and shortly after, then Sheriff Lewis showed up with Savannah Neighbors.
Okay. Did you expect Savannah
No, I didn't.
Neighbors to be there?
No, sir.
How many people had you booked?
4,
Or how many people did you have now?
5.
Did that create a problem?
A little bit. I spoke to my contact, and he said we could work it out. Typically, when you go with somebody, they pair you up in the same car with somebody else that you're affiliated with, not all the time. So that obviously threw our numbers off. I ended up driving solo. John and Joe ended up in my group, and Will and Savannah ended up in a different group.
So Will and Savannah drove in their own car?
Yes.
All right, sir. I want to turn your attention to March of 2017. Do you recall an out-of-town budget retreat?
Yes, in Charlotte, North Carolina.
And that was supposed to be in Charlotte?
Yes.
When did you first hear about this?
So there was some discussion. Will wanted to get together with the county administrator to discuss some budgetary issues, and said it would be a good idea if we could get out of town and get that scheduled, and that way we could actually work on what we needed to work on and not be distracted by what was going on here.
Well, whose idea was it to go to Charlotte?
Will.
Okay. And about how long before the trip do you recall the first time you heard that this was?
Probably a few weeks. I can't say to be exactly, but probably a few weeks.
Okay. Now, how were you supposed to get to Charlotte?
Drive.
And do you recall what time you left on the 7th?
Sometime after work. I can't be exact that day, but sometime after work.
And where were you going in Charlotte?
The Hyatt Place Hotel.
And do you, how was who was the first person to arrive there?
Myself.
And did you check in at that time?
Yes, sir.
The costs of the hotel and the expenses of the hotel, how were those paid?
My credit card.
And why did you use your credit card?
Sheriff didn't have a card at that point, so it was placed on mine.
So were the expenses for everybody or just the sheriff's office?
Just the sheriff's office, 3 employees for the sheriff's office.
Okay. And those ultimately went on your card. Who issues you that card?
Get it from County Square Procurement, is where it comes from.
And do you pay the credit card bill out of your personal funds?
No, sir.
Whose funds pay for the credit card bill when it comes in?
Sheriff's office.
The sheriff's office. With money where's the money appropriated from?
It's allowed from travel and training, budget.
And where's the travel and training money come from?
The budget, basically. There's a line item on the budget where it comes out of.
Okay, and the budget is appropriated to the sheriff by who?
The county administrator.
Okay, and does the budget process go through county council?
Yes.
And ultimately, whose money is this that's paying for this?
The public.
It's public money.
Yes, sir.
I'm showing you, sir, what's been marked as State's Exhibit 14, and I previously shared this with council.
That's correct.
State's Exhibit 14 for identification. Can you take a look at that and tell me if you recognize those documents?
Yes, sir, I do.
And what are those?
Hotel receipts and dinner receipts.
And from what hotel?
Hyatt House.
And is that the hotel you stayed at?
Yes, sir.
in Charlotte?
Yes, sir.
Are these receipts reflective of expenses incurred on the trip that you've been talking about?
Yes.
And does that accurately depict the receipts and bills as incurred?
Yes, that's my knowledge. Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, I would move State's Exhibit 14 for identification of evidence.
Yeah, do one thing on it real quick. I think we should do the first pages. Okay.
Any objection?
Okay.
No objection. What number is that?
This is the State's Exhibit 14. Yes, sir. So are all of the items that are listed on this, were these all expenses incurred on that trip?
Yes.
And all paid for with the county budget?
Yes, sir.
that you just read?
Yes, sir.
What, again, was the point of this meeting in Charlotte? What were you attempting to accomplish?
Budgetary, we wanted to try to get a raise for deputies, from master deputy up to lieutenant, and also trying to get our vehicle fleet updated.
Now, picking back up where we left off, you've arrived, you checked in,
Yes, sir.
and you were the first one there, you said?
Yes, sir.
Now, who else arrived next?
Savannah will arrive next.
Were you there when they arrived? or-
Yes.
Okay. And they checked in?
Yes.
And who else were you expecting?
The county administrator and his 2 assistants,
And his 2 assistants were?
Shannon Herman and John Hansley.
Very good. And ultimately, did they arrive?
Yes.
And approximately how long after you recall?
Probably a couple hours. As far as John and Joe?
Yes.
Yeah, probably a couple hours.
Did they arrive together?
Yes.
Now, what did you do, what happened after
When they got there, we sat down at the lobby area, ordered food and drinks.
okay. And who's we?
All 6 parties.
All right. And how long did you stay? When you say the lobby area, can you describe the place that you're talking about?
Yeah, when you go in, I believe you make a right from that front desk or something. It's a typical restaurant / bar, little seating area.
All right. And you ordered food?
Yes, sir.
And some drinks?
Yes, sir.
About how long were you there?
Probably an hour or so, maybe a little longer. I can't recall exactly.
Did the restaurant, lobby bar place
Yes.
close at some point?
Yes.
And where did you go after that?
Went after that to an Irish pub that was probably a 10, 15-minute walk away from there.
And what did you do at the Irish pub?
Sat, drank, and had a conversation.
were all 6 of you together at this point?
Yes.
And how long did you stay at the Irish pub?
Had to be at least an hour or so. I don't know exactly how long, but
And can you tell us what you did there?
yeah, basically just talk. People got familiar with each other as far as knowing who each other was and so forth.
Did you have drinks?
Yes,
And was there a round of shots or 2 ordered?
yes, I'm sure.
And who ordered those?
I can't say specifically.
Okay. What was the conversation topic? Do you recall?
Nothing specifically, just casual conversation.
So after some period of time there, you left?
Yeah, I had to leave. I left my phone back in my room, so I was gone for about, I don't know, round trip, probably 20 minutes to walk back down and walk back up.
All right. And then you returned back?
Yes.
And then stayed for about how long?
A few more minutes, I can't say, maybe 30 or so.
All right. Now, how many drinks did everybody have there, do you recall?
Sorry, I can't recall.
And you remember how many rounds of shots were ordered?
Not specifically.
And when you left, did you all leave together
Yes.
as a group?
Yes.
All right. Now, when you walked out, were you the first person out, the last person, the
To
middle?
my knowledge, I believe I was like the last person out. There's an entryway, obviously, you can't fit more than probably 2 people through there if it was even that big.
Okay. When you walked out onto the sidewalk, did you notice anything unusual?
Yeah, at that point, it kind of looked like Will had stumbled down. I didn't know what caused him to stumble at that point, and that's what I saw.
Where did you go after you left the pub?
We left there and went back to the hotel.
And did you do anything further at the hotel? Where did the group disperse to after that?
We all got on the elevator, to my knowledge that I recall, but I know I got on the elevator and went back to my room.
And where was the defendant and Savannah neighbors when you got off the elevator?
They were still on the elevator.
Did you see them again that night?
No,
Hear anything from them?
no,
No further communication?
no, sir.
What time did you wake up the next morning, do you recall?
Typically get up around 7-ish, so.
What did you do?
Went down, well, obviously I got ready, went downstairs for breakfast, and John and Joe were already downstairs.
And did you join them?
Yes,
And chat?
yes.
Who else joined you?
Shannon Herman, and after that, Will came down shortly after that.
All right. And what was the plan for the morning? What were you supposed to do?
We were going to discuss what we were there for, and that was the potential raises as well as discussing the vehicle fleet.
Okay, and the budgetary issue.
Yes.
Was Savannah there?
No.
Where, do you know where she was?
I assumed in her room, but I didn't know at that point.
Did anybody comment on why she wasn't present for this?
Well, at some point, Will had made informed us that she wasn't available.
So did you all eventually, the 5 of you, without Savannah, did you have some sort of a meeting that morning?
Yeah. Yes, sir. We started talking, and shortly after that, we left to go grab some coffee.
And where did you all meet?
Downstairs in the lobby of the breakfast area.
And how long did you talk before, that first initial session?
Maybe 30 minutes or so. I'm not sure.
But not long.
No, sir.
And what were the topics of conversation during this first initial meeting?
Just initial, like I said, she had a lot of when I say she, I'm talking about Savannah, had some of the notes. We had made packets and kind of passed those packets around and so forth. And just again, what we were going to plan on doing that day, discussing those issues.
But she wasn't there to explain
No,
the
sir.
packets?
No, sir.
Does this look like
Yes, sir.
the packet
Yeah, from what I can see, yes.
y'all were talking about? What does it say on the front?
Greenville County Sheriff's Office 2017 salary adjustment proposal.
So there was a proposal that y'all were
Yes.
bringing forward. And basically, for the salaries, what were you attempting to accomplish with the county?
Trying to adjust to get us up to par to where everybody else, as far as retention, trying to hold on to our deputies.
So there were basically suggestions or requests to
Yes.
adjust certain salaries upwards.
Yes, from master deputy up to lieutenant.
For example, the first page is lieutenants. What were you attempting to get lieutenants up to?
$30.50 an hour,
which is how much a year?
63.4.
So that was the goal, was to
Yes,
try
sir.
to get lieutenants to 63.4?
Yes, sir.
And then you also had goals for the sergeants
Yes, sir.
as well?
Yeah, and master deputy.
And master deputies. And I think you said at some point after meeting for some period of time without Savannah, did you all decide to break?
Yes,
Where did you go?
Starbucks.
Okay. And had anybody tried to reach out to Savannah at this point?
I don't know if he did at that point. I know later on he did, and basically to get her a coffee.
When did you first see Savannah?
On our way back, walking to the hotel.
And how did she appear to you?
She looks sick, a little disheveled.
And what are you thinking as you see her coming down the sidewalk towards you? What are you thinking is wrong with her?
Probably had too much to drink.
So, did she join the group at this
Yes.
point and join the discussions?
Yes.
And where did you go as you returned back from Starbucks?
Back inside the hotel lobby, over to the side, there was a kind of a quiet space, a nook area, and that's where we conducted business.
And what did you discuss during this time period?
Salaries and vehicles.
And how much longer did you meet for this period?
Probably a couple of hours before lunchtime. I can't exactly say the specific time.
All right. And this is 2.5 years ago, so
Yeah.
nobody's holding you to, you weren't taking notes on time for this, were you?
Right.
As a matter of fact, was this event even significant to you at all
No.
for the months afterwards?
No, just like normal business.
So you had no reason to remember any of this
No, sir.
until a few months later?
Correct.
Where did you go? Do you remember where you went to lunch?
I think it was something, had the name Roost in it or something of that nature. It wasn't too far, maybe a 10-minute walk.
All right. And to who all went,
Everybody.
including Ms. Neighbors?
Yes, sir.
About how long did you take to go to lunch?
Hour or so. It was lunchtime in Charlotte, so however long it takes to get your food and so forth.
Now, during this time period when you're meeting in the Nook, and then you're going to lunch, you're eating lunch, and you're walking back, did you notice anything unusual or anything stand out to you about Ms. Neighbors' appearance or the way she behaved?
Everything seemed normal.
Was she participating in the
Yes.
discussions? And about what time did you knock off the budget discussions after you returned? What did you do after you returned from lunch? Let me just.
We went back and started discussing again, and I want to say the best of my knowledge, 4:35, somewhere around in there.
What was the plan for the evening?
We were going to have dinner and go out to the Epic Center, which is a complex close to where we were staying, different bars and karaoke bars, things of that nature.
And did you ultimately do that?
Yes.
And do you remember where you ate for dinner or what kind of food it was?
If I'm not mistaken, it was an Italian restaurant.
And again, did all 6 of you attend the dinner?
Yes, sir.
And you had drinks at dinner?
Yes, sir.
Now, how long did you stay at the Italian restaurant?
If I'm not mistaken, we had to wait for a little while to actually get in, so maybe an hour, hour and a half.
Okay. And where did you go after that?
We left there and went over to a karaoke bar over at the Epic Center, which was not too far, just down the street.
Now, did you all stay together, or did anybody break off from the group for a little bit of time during this period?
Most of the time, I think we were together. I think Will may have stopped off and got him some dip or something of that nature, which that complex, everything's located right there together.
So he left the group and rejoined you?
To the best of my recollection.
And do you remember the place you went to at the epicenter?
Something Lizzie's or something like that. I can't remember the name of it.
How long did you stay there?
A couple hours.
And were drinks being had?
Yes, sir.
And what was going on at this bar?
Nothing, just basically sitting at the table, talking and observing people up there doing a karaoke thing.
Did you interact with any people outside the group?
I didn't, no.
Did anybody else
Yeah,
interact? with
I saw a
any-
couple people talking to people. Yes, sir.
At some point, did Mr. Hansley leave the group?
He did.
And where did he go?
I assumed back to the hotel. I didn't ask him, but I assumed back to
Is that?
Yes, sir.
But the rest of you stayed there?
Yes, sir.
And for some period of time?
Yes, sir.
And do you know about how long you stayed after Mr. Hansley left?
Not off the top of my head, I mean, at least 45 minutes or so.
And where did you go after this place?
There was another place inside the epicenter that we went to, probably 15, 20 minutes that we actually stayed there.
Was this a restaurant, a bar?
No, probably more of a restaurant bar / nightclub right around there.
And how long did you say you stayed there?
15, 20 minutes. It wasn't very long. It was
Long
getting
enough to
late.
have a drink?
Yeah, it was getting late. Yes, sir.
Was it getting close to closing time?
Probably so. I would think so.
Where did you go after this place you were at for a short period of time?
Straight back to the hotel.
So now it's still the five of you, because Mr. Hansley has
Yes,
left the group.
correct.
And when you left the hotel, what level of intoxication would you say? What was everybody's condition?
Everybody seemed fine. I didn't see anybody stumbling, falling down, or anything like that.
Did you return to the hotel together as a group?
Yes,
And when you got to the hotel, where did you go?
straight to the elevator and to my room.
And did you see the defendant and Ms. Neighbors?
It's been so long, but I want to say, everybody's probably on the elevator, and I know I got off first
When was the last time you saw them then, maybe on the elevator or the lobby?
when I exited. Yes, sir.
And what took place the next morning?
Myself, Will, and Savannah went to breakfast, again, back over towards the epicenter, and basically had a conversation about how do we think the meeting went? Will we get this approved, and will we get that approved?
Notice anything unusual about either the defendant or Ms. Neighbors' demeanor at that time?
No, sir.
Nothing stood out?
No.
Were you looking for anything?
No, just sitting there talking about that and eating breakfast, but nothing stood out.
After breakfast, where'd you go?
I went back to the hotel, gathered my bag, and drove back to Greenville.
You remember about what time you left out of there?
It was before noon, obviously because of checkout, but 10, 11 maybe, I'm not sure.
Describe for the jury, and when you went back, did you drive back alone, or did one of the two of them ride back with you?
No, I drove back solo.
So describe for the jury, if you can, what was the relationship as you observed it between the defendant and his neighbors over the next 6 weeks?
Again, my office was at the end of the hall. When I had contact with them together, well, if I had contact with her, it was to set up a meeting for him to go to or some kind of correspondence. As far as seeing them together, everything seemed normal. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Again, I wasn't looking for anything, but I didn't see anything out of the ordinary.
When did you learn that there was an issue?
Later on, I guess it would have been April, I learned that there was an issue because one of the captains, Ty Miller, a female, contacted me on a Saturday and said, Savannah wants to meet with me. I don't know what's going on. We may have an issue.
All right, and how long did Savannah remain employed at the sheriff's office after that phone call from Ms. Miller?
That would have been on Saturday, and to my knowledge, on Monday, she was gone. I didn't see her again after. Well, I don't know when the last time I saw her, but I know she's supposed to report back to work on that Monday, but I never saw her.
From the time she left to say about August, was Savannah Neighbors on your radar for any reason at all?
No, sir.
Did-
Just be like another employee quitting. So, no.
She's gone and that's that.
Yes, sir.
When did she pop up on your radar next?
When I was made aware of this blog, her basically is claiming that a sexual assault that happened.
All right, and you remember about when that was?
I don't know what the date was, but just whenever that blog came out.
Did you have occasion to talk to the defendant or him to you or to groups of people
Yes.
in the sheriff's office about these accusations?
Yes, sir.
And what was the nature of his comments to you?
He denied any type of interaction.
Any kind of sexual
Yes.
interaction? How many times did he deny?
Several.
Ultimately, did you become aware that a lawsuit had been filed?
Yes.
Were you present at a press conference?
Yes.
That Mr. Lewis had?
Yes.
Do you recall that?
Don't remember the ins and outs, but basically him having a press conference over what transpired.
And at that press conference, what did he say?
I can't remember exactly, sir.
Did he acknowledge that there's been a sexual relationship? Did you also come to learn about his claim that Savannah Neighbors he'd known her since she was young and she'd babysat for her?
Yes,
And what did you learn about that?
that was false.
During the time period, February, March, did the defendant share with you any, did you have any discussions with him about him trying to get Savannah Neighbors a raise?
Yes, he mentioned that she had been doing, good hard work, and that he wanted to see if he could go ahead and get her a raise.
And at this point in time, she'd been working for how long?
It wasn't very long, a few months.
Just one more question, unrelated to Savannah Neighbors, but are there chaplains at the Greenville County Sheriff's Office?
Yes,
What do they do?
basically serve as a spiritual guide for our deputies, our male and female deputies.
In the course of their duties, are they employees?
We have one that is a full-time employee. He was a chaplain, left his church and decided to go back to the Criminal Justice Academy and get certified. And now he's a full-time deputy and a chaplain.
Okay, and he counsels officers?
Yes, sir.
Is law enforcement, is there some reason you need a counselor in law enforcement?
You see a lot of bad things. You hear a lot of bad things. It's just the nature of the beast. Yes, sir.
In the course of their duties, did the chaplains, the one who's paid and employed as a deputy, and some of the volunteers, do they sometimes ride with the deputies?
Yes, sir.
And when you're riding with a deputy, are you exposed to the same dangers they are?
Yes.
And do those chaplains, or at least the one who's certified as a law enforcement officer, does he have a bulletproof vest?
He does.
What's involved is one number. Thank you very much, Chief. I appreciate it. Please answer any questions that counsel for the defendant has.
Chief, how did the meeting go?
It went well. Ultimately, we got our goals were set, so ultimately we got what we requested.
And y'all spent roughly 8:30 in the morning to 4:35 in the afternoon discussing it.
Yes, sir.
And I'm correct in assuming that even when y'all went after done, y'all considered continue to discuss the issues involving the budget, the sheriff's department, and the county.
Yes, sir.
So it wasn't just 8:30 to 5:30.
No.
5.
No.
It was basic topic of discussion when y'all out eating.
Yes, sir.
And do you remember anybody at one point one evening finally saying, let's quit talking about the budget?
I can't say. I'm sure it probably came up. Yes.
Did you know if Joe Cornell knew Will Lewis before he became sheriff?
I don't know what to extent. I'm not sure what their relationship was.
Do you think the meeting in Charlotte was beneficial to the sheriff's department?
Yes, sir.
Did Will Lewis achieve some of his goals at that meeting?
Yes, sir.
And the goals concerning raise the salaries for people?
And vehicles. Yes.
Now, are you familiar with at all with even generally the budgetary process with Greenville County and the sheriff's department?
Yes.
Right. The sheriff doesn't raise money, does it?
No.
It's dependent upon whom for its budget? Who's it dependent upon for its budget?
County council.
Okay, so literally, and I'm correct in saying literally, the sheriff's department can't spend money without approval of the county council.
Yes.
They can request money.
Yes.
And they can request funding for different positions.
Yes.
But money has to be approved by the council.
That's correct.
So Savannah was late getting there, but was there for late morning and all afternoon.
Yes, sir.
And she participated in discussions.
Yes.
And she was sitting, I assume, next to Will.
I can't remember.
Okay.
But somewhere close.
Did you ever observe anything unusual in her behavior with Mr. Lewis at any of those meetings?
No.
Now, do you think that the trip do you think you could have accomplished what you did on that trip, seeing in an office in Greenville?
Probably so.
All right.
Probably could.
Would Joe Cornell have gotten to know Will Lewis as well sitting in office in Greenville as he did on that trip?
Probably not.
Okay. And the relationship between the sheriff and Joe Cornell is important to the sheriff's department.
Very much.
And if they get to know each other, that benefits the sheriff's department.
Yes.
And that could not have been accomplished in Greenville then.
Be hard, but
Over time, perhaps.
Yes, sir.
But certainly not over two days.
right.
Okay. Now, y'all went out the second night, to a place in Charlotte.
Mhm.
Do you recognize this picture?
Yeah. That's a picture that we took. Yes.
And that's the second night?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to move this to. No, okay.
One.
Yes. All right, tell us who is depicted in that picture.
That is myself and Savannah Neighbors taking a picture.
All right, do you know who took it?
No, I really don't.
Okay. She looks happy in that picture.
Yes, sir.
Did you notice that night anything about her being upset?
No.
Anything at all unusual about her demeanor?
No.
Right. Did the next morning when y'all, the final morning when y'all went to breakfast, everybody participated in the discussion?
Yes.
Did she seem at all upset?
No.
Did she seem standoffish to Will or anything?
No.
Everybody get along?
Yes.
Let me phrase it this way. If she had been standoffish toward Will, would that have been obvious to you?
Probably so.
Would have been something that attracted your attention?
Yes.
Because it wasn't there, maybe rephrase it. So if they'd been standoffish, you think you would have noticed?
Yes.
Okay. But it didn't happen.
No.
And nobody was, either night was very much intoxicated.
No, I saw nobody stoned. I didn't see any obvious signs.
Everybody been drinking.
Yes.
But that's it. When you checked into the hotel, your room was prepaid for, wasn't it?
I don't remember. It seemed like it was booked though.
Right. Do you know if the hotel asked you for a credit card to put incidentals on?
Probably so. That's normal.
Generally,
procedure.
it's a policy.
Normal procedure.
Okay. Because if it's prepaid, just the room is authorized.
Yes.
Okay. So, after, go back one other thing, a crime scene. A good crime scene person has a crime scene log, don't they?
Yes.
And a crime scene log does what?
Basically, it shows the accountability, who was inside and who wasn't.
Who walks past the line?
Yes.
Right. So if Savannah Neighbors had walked into a crime scene, she would have been on the crime scene log.
Should have been.
And you haven't had an opportunity to check to see if she ever walked into a crime scene.
No, that's not part of my duties as
Okay.
far as checking out.
And no one asked you to do that for
No.
this trial. So Savannah Neighbors came to the crime scene,
Yes.
but you don't have any knowledge that she actually went into a crime scene.
None that I witnessed.
And that's the big difference, correct?
Correct.
Right? And also in many crime scenes, the press shows up.
That's true.
And it wasn't Savannah Neighbors' obligation to deal with them,
Some of it, yes, sir.
right? And that was one of her reasons for being at the crime scene, so the sheriff didn't have to deal with it.
Yes. Along
And
with
crime
that.
scenes that frequently occur after working hours.
Yes.
And so she would be called out after working hours.
Yes.
And you know that occurred a good bit.
To my knowledge, I've seen her on one.
You've only seen only one?
Yeah.
All right, what have you heard? That wouldn't be a proper question. So you've seen her in one?
Yes.
Now, when she left, who took her place?
Addie Hampton.
And Eddie Hampton stayed there for about a year or so afterwards?
Yes, sir.
And do you know if Eddie Hampton got the raise that was initially to be given to?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
Did Sheriff Loftus have a personal representative, a personal assistant?
No.
Sheriffs are asked to do a lot of things in the community
Yes.
with schedule.
Yes.
And it's important to have someone who can keep your schedule straight
I agree.
and keep you on track as to where you've got to be and when.
Yes.
And Savannah Naylor showed up at command staff meetings, didn't she?
Yes.
And took notes.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, you've seen her at one crime scene dealing with issues.
Yes.
When the sheriff made a speech, that she usually go to those.
Yes.
Right? So she was basically the sheriff's right-hand person.
Yes.
Right? And if he went somewhere, she was expected to go.
Yes.
Be correct?
Yes.
All right. And y'all discussed salaries and vehicles. What do you recall us discussing about vehicles?
To get our vehicle fleet up to par. We've got a lot of old cars, and we're basically trying to get some newer cars.
And was that receptive from
Yes.
Joe Cordell?
Yes.
And do you remember whether or not Will Lewis proposed something as far as vehicles that had not been done previously with other sheriff's departments?
I can't recall that portion.
Do you remember do you recall anything about what was said about replacing vehicles?
Yeah, that we just want to get our fleet up to date. Yes, sir.
And did you want to do it differently as had been done in the past?
I can't remember exact conversation on it.
Okay. Will Lewis showed up at work every day that you remember?
Yes.
Absolutely. Correct?
Yes.
Attendance was good?
Yes.
And he had some different ideas from the sheriff's department,
Yes.
how it should run.
Yes.
Did you think some of those ideas were a big improvement?
Yes.
And they made the sheriff's department run better?
Yes.
And aside from this incident, Will Lewis' performance as sheriff was certainly what you would expect.
Yes.
And give me 1 second. Maybe Evans, Sheriff Simmons was sheriff,
Yes.
and he actually employed his wife.
Yes.
In what capacity?
I don't know. I was a master deputy, so I wasn't involved in it.
Okay, you just knew she worked there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And there were some civilians that had county issued cars that worked for the sheriff's department, weren't they? Or do you know?
There were only, in this bracket, excuse me, the only people that I know that would have civilians would be the victim advocates.
Victims advocates?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And they were civilians?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and they had county issued cars too?
Yes, sir.
And they had county issued cars because they had to go out on duties for the county?
Yeah, depending on if they were called or not. That's what I'm saying.
And county issued cars are issued for people who, I guess I would assume primarily after hours, would have to go on business for the county.
Yes.
That would make sense.
Yes.
Thank you. Hold on.
You're right. Yes, sir. Working backwards, victim advocates have cars. Mr. Wise was just asking you about. What is the job of a victim advocate?
Basically, to be there for a victim's need if somebody was a victim of a horrific crime or something of that nature. Basically, victims.
And do they actually show up at the crime scene?
Typically, no.
Where do
I've
they
never
go?
seen one at a crime scene. I've seen them go to hospitals and things of that nature.
So they're required to go wherever the victim went.
Yes.
And what do they do for the victim?
Some
And the
arrangements,
victim's family?
try to get them lodging if necessary, food, things of that nature.
So they're there to assist.
Yes.
And do crimes happen at any time of the day or night?
Yes.
So they're on call,
Yes, sir.
effectively.
Yes.
Does the sheriff's office have PIOs?
Yes.
What is a PIO?
Public information officer, primary job is to deal with the media.
are the PIOs at the sheriff's office sworn law enforcement officers?
They are.
And so they are badge-wearing, gun-carrier?
Regular deputies, yes, sir.
And is it, whose primary responsibility is it to deal with the media?
The PIOs.
Mr. Wise asked you about Ms. Neighbor's appearance, and she looked happy in that picture. Where was that picture taken? You were
That was at the first place we stopped after dinner on the second night.
after dinner?
Yes, sir.
The
Lizzie's
karaoke?
or whatever. Yes, sir.
The karaoke bar
Yes, sir.
that you were at for a few hours?
Yes.
So you had some drinks?
Yes.
She was in good spirits?
Yes.
Was the defendant in good spirits?
Yes.
Did you notice anything unusual about him?
No.
Could you tell that he was upset about anything?
No.
He asked, Mr. Wise asked you that the trip to Charlotte was beneficial because Joe Cornell, and who is he again?
County administrator.
You got to know Will.
Yes.
You did get to know him, didn't you?
Yes.
As a result of this trip.
Yes, sir.
And finally, Mr. Wise asked you a series of questions that Mr. Lewis, the defendant, had some good ideas.
Yes, sir.
He did some good things.
Yes.
And he asked you, I think his quote was, his performance was what you would expect.
Yes.
Would you expect the sheriff to be honest with you?
Yes, sir.
To tell you the truth about his relationship with a subordinate?
Yes, sir.
To tell you how he knew somebody?
Yes, sir.
Did he do those things?
No, sir.
Do civilians ride along with sheriff's deputies on occasion?
Yes, sir.
And yet civilians ride along,
Yes, sir.
and of course, the back car to a crime scene, civilians would show up.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis was not honest with you originally, was he, about his relationship with Savannah?
No, sir.
But eventually was.
Yes.
Did you watch, you don't remember watching the press conference he held?
Kind of stayed back because I was a little bit upset about it. So,
I understand.
yes.
But he owned up to it.
Yes, sir.
And I think he apologized to the sheriff's department for his actions.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, you may come down. This witness be excused.
We would ask that the witness be excused.
No objection. Free to go. Thank you very much.